Hello and welcome to Blank First Page. My name is Lucas. This is one of my kitchen drawers and it is my flour drawer. It contains all my 5 and 10 kilo bags of flour that I use to make bread. And in this video I'm going to be using the old empty flour bags that I've taken apart to make a couple of notebooks. So I've been making sourdough bread since 2015. My sourdough starter has traveled with me across 4 countries now. And because I make bread at the rate that I do, a couple of loaves a week usually, I consume a lot of flour. So it's become far more economical for me to buy my flour in 5 and 10 kilo bags when it's available in those quantities. And I always feel bad when I'm throwing away an empty bag of flour because it's usually some form of craft paper, like the white and brown paper I'm showing here. It's usually got a very nice texture on it because I've rolled and unrolled the bag so many times, so it's become really crumpled and nice and satisfying to feel from a texture perspective. So every time I'm throwing it away, I always wish I had a use for that paper. And every so often I decide, okay, I'm going to save a couple and make some notebooks out of it. The last time I did this was in Australia and I used some flour bags that I saved there. This time I'm using flour bags from Dutch flour that I've been using here in the Netherlands. And in this light, in these shots here, you can really see that texture on the flour bag paper. It's almost what my field notes look like at the end of their use, but the benefit here is I'm actually starting out with the pages in that format already. So for the entire duration that I'm going to be using these notebooks, I'll have the nice texture. So one thing I did do when I took the flour bags apart, I kind of cut them at their seams where they're glued together to make the bag shape, and I got them rolled out into the long form that you saw at the start of the video. I did spray them very slightly with a spray bottle with some water and then ironed them out just so that the surface was actually flat, but the texture of the crinkles remained. This craft of book binding, although this is a very rudimentary form of it, it's a very satisfying craft. You kind of have to go through a specific set of steps to get your material down to size, then doing steps like this, like folding it over and putting all the sheets together. It's very satisfying because there's an order to it, there's a specific procedure you have to follow, and it's just an enjoyable, relaxing task. I used my cast iron pot there to weigh the notebooks down, to press them into place. I don't have a book press, and I use the cast iron because it's both one of the heaviest items I have in my house, and I also use it to make bread, so I thought it was appropriate to use in this process. One of the things I noticed with my previous flour notebook that I made, I used the same paper that I used for the inside for the cover of the notebook, and that meant that they didn't really have a cover. So the outside sheets which were forming the cover were a bit too flimsy, and it wasn't as nice to use because there was no structure to it. So here I decided to glue the cover I wanted, the cover that I had selected from a specific flour bag. I glued it onto some backing paper, which was thicker paper, and it's actually leftover wrapping from an Amazon package that I received. I used some wood glue that I watered down very slightly to make it a bit more usable and paint brushable onto the paper. And then I placed each one of the covers in between a couple of sheets of baking paper. Baking paper is sometimes also called non-stick, so I thought it should do a good job of not sticking to the paper cover itself. And I put everything into my biggest notebook so that it would dry flat. I think if you allow paper that's been made wet with glue to then dry independently, it might curl up. So this system actually ended up working quite well, even though I'm just using objects from around my house pretty much. So the last 2 steps I'm going to do here are to staple everything together. I'm using the 3 staple method from Field Notes and the basic, very cheap €3 stapler to carry this out. And then the second step is to trim that fanning that you get when you have multiple pieces of paper and you fold them over in the middle. The innermost pages stick out more and the outer shell, if I can call it that, kind of has to wrap around the rest so it gets pulled in. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just tracing around the Field Notes to get my size, lining everything up, and then very patiently cutting through all the sheets in the notebook. Most of the effort and the focus here is on actually keeping the ruler nice and straight and steady and allowing the sharp knife to just slowly and methodically get through each of the pages of the notebook. Doing it in this way, you end up with a much cleaner, tidier look than trying to get through as many pages of the notebook as you can in one cut. And there is my second edition of flower paper notebooks. I really like how these turned out. I'm pleased with the thicker cover, and all I can say is that the texture of these pages is just unbelievable. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that video. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.